What's going on, everyone? Well, we're on the road again this morning. We were headed out to Fox Auto U-Pole because scrolling through Facebook last night, I like their page, and they post when they have new vehicles in. They post pictures on their Facebook there, and they posted up this black Datsun 280Z, and it looked awfully familiar. And I had maybe a year ago, I'm not sure how long it's been, I had a black 280Z, and I got to looking at the pictures, and sure enough, that's my old car. So right now we're headed out there for two reasons. Number one, just gonna say goodbye, and number two, I want the driver's door off of it. And I know you're like, why do you want the driver's door off it? Well, I'll explain when we get there. Oh, we've made it here. Walking to the way back. But I found, I don't know if it's Firebird or just, if it's Trans Am. Looks like Firebird. It's plain old Firebird. These are the ugly ones. 91s and 92s. They've got this big, ugly nose on them. So, yeah, we gotta walk way down there. Here it is. That's part of the reason I want this door. I want to hang it up on the wall. Just for memories. But yeah, this was my car. I'll have a story about it when we head back. I had the smashed up tape deck in it since I got it. It was always like that. See, somebody tore the rear carpet out. Oh, they tore all the carpet out and destroyed the center console. Isn't that nice? Aluminum 4-lug rims. I think it had like brand new tires on it. It had one cracked T-top. We got the door off. I just had to sit in it one last time and say goodbye to the old girl. She'll be stripped and scrapped because sadly Fox Auto does not sell whole vehicles. If they did, I would definitely buy this back in a heartbeat. This is how I'd start it. As a kid I got it from didn't have a key for it. And start it with a screwdriver. Well, little girl, it was fun. So long. Alright, so we got out of there. We got our door. And gonna get home here, and then I'll tell you the story of this car. But first, big thank you to Fox Auto U-Pole in Belleville. You guys are awesome. When I saw them post the pictures of that car on Facebook last night, I commented and was like, "Oh, that's my old car," and they wrote me back, and I told them I was going to come by the driver's door, and they said that because of that, because it was my old car and I wanted the door off it, that they would give me half off price, and the total was going to be like $90 for the door with the mirror on it and everything. but I ended up getting it for 42 bucks. So once again, big thank you to Fox Auto U-Pole with Belleville. You guys are awesome. But before I tell you the story of this car, I've got some short clips of the car when I had it and a couple pictures. I'm gonna go ahead and put those in right now. Alright, so now the story of my 1980 Datsun 280Z. I was with this girl for a couple years, and she had gotten in a car accident, so I was driving her to work. And so we pull in one day, and I'm, dropping her off, and I look over, and here's this black Datsun sitting in the parking lot. And I'm like, oh man, I've always wanted one of those cars. And she goes, oh, that's so-and-so's car, I work with him. So I told her, I was like, tell him I want his car. And I'll trade him. I had a couple pretty nice cars at the time because, I'd buy, sell, trade. So I'd, buy cars and fix them up a little bit and I'd resell them. So I had a pretty nice Grand Am at the time. And I told her, I was like, tell him I'll trade him my Grand Am for it, because there's, this old beat up Datsun. And he was a young kid. So I was like, surely he'll trade for a, nice newer car. But that was not the case. I had gotten a hold of him on Facebook, and I messaged him and was, trying to trade him all this stuff and, asking him what he would sell it for, and he would not get rid of it. Didn't want to get rid of this car. And so, I messaged him every once in a long while and, so tried to buy it from him, and it was always the same answer. Nope, didn't want to get rid of it. So eventually I gave up. And so all this time goes by, and me and a buddy of mine are driving down this back road, and there's houses on one side and there's like farmland, field on the other side. And I look over in the field and here sits this black Datsun, and I'm like, oh man, I've always wanted one of those. I wonder what's going on with that. And I assumed maybe it belongs to the the guy who lives across the street. And so my buddy and I, we went along to did what we were doing. And then on the way back, I asked him to stop. I wanted to check it out. So we go down there, and I'm, checking it out, looking at it. And I'm like, man, I'd love to get this thing, save it, from this field. And so I took a picture of it, and, we left. And I posted it on Facebook. And I was like, man, I found this Datsun out in the field. I wonder who owns it. And that kid commented on the picture and was like, oh, that's where I left it. And, jokingly. And when I had first come up on it and was checking it out, it hadn't occurred to me that that was the same car that I'd been bugging that kid about for so long. Until he left that comment. And I was like, oh, that's that car I've been wanting. So I messaged him again. And I was like, dude, what are you doing with this car? You're just going to let it sit here and rot? What's the deal? I want to buy it. I want it bad. I had cash and I wanted it. And so, after some talking, he finally agreed to sell it to me for $500. So we decided on a day to meet up and get it. And I drove out there to the side of the road where it was parked in that field, met him there. I had my trailer and, come along and chain and everything, because I assumed it didn't run. It was sitting on all flat tires, sitting on the rims. And I get there, and, he's down messing with it. And he's like, oh, it might drive out of here. I just had it running. I was like, what? You just had it running? What are you talking about? Because it had sat there, he said, about a year or so it had sat there. And he goes down there and, cranks it, and sure enough, it fires right up. And he, he rocked it back and forth a couple times, and it, got it up out of the holes it was sitting in, and drove it up out of the field, up onto the road, and right up onto the trailer on all flat tires. And that, I couldn't believe it. You know, because I'm not a huge fan of foreign cars. I'm a Chevy guy at heart, but of course I like them all. I've got some Fords and stuff. Um, but after I saw that, I was like, maybe foreign stuff's not so bad. But anyways, so yeah, we get it loaded up. I get it strapped down, and he's got the title for me. And he was telling me about this other one he had. I think it was an '82. That he had bought from a guy pretty much for parts. It was a stick shift car. The black one was a automatic. And he said the motor was no good in it, and it was completely stripped. The guy he bought it from had stripped it down, was gonna restore it. And he said he'd sell it to me for like scrap price, like a couple $100. So I was thinking, I had a big wad of hundreds in my pocket, and I thought for a moment, and I was like, how about I'll give you $600 right now for both cars. And he's like, oh, I don't know. So I pull out that wad of hundreds and I count out, 6 bills right in front of him and, go to hand it to him. And that made him change his mind pretty quick because he was like, yeah, all right, we'll do that. So I gave him the 600. He gave me the title for the black car. And we, kept in contact on Facebook. And a few days later, I went and picked up the other car, which was in a different location, sitting in a barn. And it was all, like I say, it was completely like stripped down, ready for body work and paint and everything. So it was just completely full of parts. And so I got that loaded up. And then it didn't have the fenders, the hood, the rear hatch, and some other parts. Like, the big parts that make it look like a car, weren't there. He was like, oh, those are at my brother's house. I can get them, this weekend or whatever. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And so I messaged him a couple days later, and we were supposed to meet up and get him. And he, opened my messages, didn't respond, wasn't responding to any of my messages. I kept messaging him and, like, what's the deal? What's going on? I need to get these parts. And to this day, I've never heard from him again. So he screwed me on getting the rest of the parts for that car. But anyways, the black one, the 80, I did some work to it. I drove it around a little bit, drove it around town. I didn't take it very far. It was in pretty poor shape. It was very rusty and, beat up. But I didn't care. I loved it. I'd wanted that car for so long, and the fact that I had finally been able to buy it, that was awesome to me. So I think all I ended up doing to it was like a tune-up and an oil change. Let's say it ran pretty decent. And it's funny, I had it parked over at a friend of mine's house, a couple houses down, and this was in the wintertime, so it's cold out. But there came a day, it was decent warm out. I was like, well, I need to fire up that car, make sure everything's still good on it. So I fired it up, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna take it for a drive down the road. And I didn't have plates or insurance or anything like that on the car, so I don't know if I had even transferred the title into my name. Oh, I might have. It might have been in my name. But anyways, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna take it up and down the road. So I live right in town. So on the back road, not the great big main road, but one of the back roads, back city roads, town roads, whatever you want to call it. So I took it flying down the road. I put the hammer down, put the pedal to the floor, flying down the road. I turned around, came flying back, and went down the hill. There's a little hill over by my buddy's house there. I went flying down the hill and turned around down there, came flying back up the hill and coming by my house, and I look up the road, and on the corner, here sat this cop. He was probably waiting for me. So I was like, oh crap. So I stopped, I slowed down real quick right in front of my house, and I backed it up into my driveway and shut it off. And that cop come down and drove by my house real slow and kept on going. So I got lucky. I probably would have gotten in some pretty big trouble if he would have caught me flying down the road in a car with, no plate, no insurance, nothing like that. But, yeah, so I had it for, I think, a few months. And then I, decided that I was going to sell it. Like I say, it was in rough shape. It needed quite a bit of work, and, I needed some money at the time. So I put it up for sale, and I had a kid come from the next town over, and he came and looked at it with his dad, and he was looking it all over with a great big smile on his face. He had, he had wanted a car like this, and he was all excited about it, wanted to fix it up, and he didn't even, he gave me my asking price. He didn't try to barter with me or anything. He gave me what I was asking for it. So that made me feel pretty good. I was pretty excited that it was going to go to this kid who was, just as excited about it as I was when I first got it. So I sold it to him, and then maybe a couple weeks later, I drove by, I delivered it to him, so I knew where the car was stored at. And a couple weeks later, I drove by, and it was sitting out to the road for sale. And my heart just sank. I was like, man, that's just disappointing. So I messaged him, was like, oh, what happened? He's like, oh, I just decided it's going to be too much work. And he said he had another guy that was going to come buy it, but he said if I wanted it back, that he would sell it to me. And I told him, no, it's all right, just go ahead and sell it. And so he sold it to someone else, and that was the last I'd saw of it for a while, for quite a few months. I didn't know, who bought it, where it went, until last night. I, saw the pictures of it on Fox Auto. And I, once again, seeing that it ended up at the junkyard, my heart just sank even more. If I would have known that it was going to end up at the junkyard, because, now its fate is to, be parted out and scrapped. But if I would have known that, I would have never got rid of it. Or I would at least bought it back from the kid that I sold it to. But that's alright. Can't keep them all. I'll have another Datsun in the future, I'm sure. I've already been looking at a few. But anyways, yeah, that is the story of my 1980 Datsun. But let's say I got the door off it now. I'll hang it up when I get my garage in order. I'll hang it up. I've got the hood off my very first truck I ever bought and fixed up. I've got the hood off of that, and then I've got the grill off my very first car, like my very first vehicle ever that my mom gave me. So when I get my garage all together, I hang all that stuff up on the wall and think of all the good times I used to have with those vehicles. But anyways, that's gonna be it for this. Smash that like button, leave a comment, and of course don't forget to subscribe, and have a good one.